My name's Bill. I'm an addict.
Hey, Bill.
And I want to thank the committee first and foremost for all your hard work and dedication for this event. It's hard enough putting on any event, but then when you got to do it in the Zoom platform, I'm sure that adds a little extra to the work involved. So I think you guys are doing a great job, and it's truly an honor to be asked to share in any Narcotics Anonymous meeting to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope, and most importantly to thank the higher power that I'm alive and breathing and able to do this. Because as most of the way we were living our lives, we're all blessed to be alive today because there's many others that didn't quite make it to the rooms, and there's many others that made it here and didn't buy in all the way and chose to go out and use that one more, and that was the last one they got to use. I've buried quite a few friends in this program. It hasn't been the easiest road, but I can tell you, through my little over 10 years clean, it's been the best road I've ever been on in my entire life, and for that, my gratitude it flows through me. I'm in love with my life. I'm in love with Narcotics Anonymous. I'm in love with people in my life, and when I got here, it wasn't like that. I wasn't able to love, and I remember when I first got clean, I ended up, like many of us, my vehicle to Narcotics Anonymous was through the Department of Corrections. I served a few prison sentences, and I was on my way to prison for the third time. When I was broken, and I finally want to say I hit the bottom that was sufficient enough for me to stop digging. And I was sitting in an abandoned house in 2010, and I had just went out and robbed somebody. That was my vehicle to get more. I'm a thief. A liar, con, but most of all, I'm a thief, and I'll take anything I can get my hands on it, and I'll sell you a pair of shoes with holes in them. I'm pretty good at the hustle to get one more, and it was a sad, miserable existence. And I can tell you, like, through my process of digging, I hit many different bottoms. Being in prison multiple times, those are bottoms. Being homeless is a bottom. Living in abandoned houses, those are bottoms. But the bottom I hit in the end was the emptiness inside, like that I didn't want to go on living this way anymore. The emotional pain, the despair. I only had one family member that was even really in my life at this time, and that was my mom, and I caused this woman so much harm and so much pain, and took so many nights of sleep from her, and I'm the cause of all her gray hairs, and and she had a lot of health issues, and I'm not going to say I made her kidneys failure happen, but because of her health issues and the stress I put on top of it, I'm sure it escalated all of her health problems, and that's something I have to live with, I'm grateful that, I got clean. I got clean and got to do a lot for her, that's the blessing. But, in the end, I was like, what a piece of shit, what a scumbag I am. The whole world will be better off without me. The one person who loved me through it all is the person I hurt the most. What was the point of me even being here anymore? And, it's funny because when I was broken and in that abandoned house, I had no problem praying to God. I was like, God, man, I could tell you my specific prayer I had, and I get caught up in the monotony of prayer every day, and I start saying that repetitious prayer all the time. But when I pray wholeheartedly and with a true spirit, I always get a connection, and when I was in that abandoned house, I was praying like, God, please help me get arrested. Help me get in front of a judge where I can ask for help, because, I knew about Narcotics Anonymous. I knew about treatment. I just needed some way to get here, and my prayer was very, very, very specific that I get a charge that's not going to send me to prison again. Something that was petty enough just to get me some clear-headedness that I can follow the path. And I was arrested on some petty charges, and and I sat in the jail, and out of all the times I sat in jail, this is the first time I sat in jail and I couldn't come up with a plan. All my other times in jail, I'd always come up with some grandiose idea. Oh, I'm going to do this when I get out. I'm going to start this business. Oh, I'm going to do something different every time. And I always went out with that good intentions. And I always ended up back in the abandoned house smoking dope, man. No matter what I had in my heart to go do, I always ended up back in that same spot. And so I know I needed to do some work, man. And, just being abstinent wasn't going to do it. There's a saying that, I read a lot of sayings. I get a lot of sayings with my sponsor that he incorporates into my life. But one of the best ones is the road to hell was paved with good intentions. So I had good intentions. I had a good heart. I just never followed through with the things I had. And it's good to see that now and see it in early recovery, because when I got here and I finally started doing some work, I thought I was like this piece of crap. I thought I was worthless and all that. And, you know, through doing some work, I found out that I wasn't worthless. You know, I had a good heart. I just had so much pain and anger inside that I had to deal with first, that I can get to the purity of myself, you know. And you know, I remember sitting in that treatment center, and you know, I'll go back a little bit. You know, I raised my hand in a courtroom. That's all part of my surrender. You know, the cops kicked in the house at the abandoned house. I didn't run. You know, I sat there. I was ready. You know, and I sat there. I went to jail. I couldn't come up with a plan. You know, I went in front of the judge. They were going to release me on 2 years drug offender probation. I don't know where they were going to release me to, because all I had was the abandoned house that they just kicked me out of. But you know, and I shot my hand up, and the judge was like, "What would you like to say?" And I said, "Your Honor, I need help." And she looked at my record, and she couldn't believe I've never been offered help before. You know, and I want to say a quick thanks to all the people who came through the courts before me for showing the judges and those people that these programs work, that these 12-step fellowships actually do change and save lives. Because if they didn't have that hope and belief in this system, she might not have given me this chance. So somebody paved the way for me, and I'm grateful for that, you know. And she looked at me and she says, "You know, I can see your record, all burglaries and grand thefts and drug possession and paraphernalia and fleeing. Every charge I've ever been arrested on has something to do with ways and means to get more." And she looked at me and she says, "Yeah, I think you could use some help." And she goes, "I'm going to send you to a treatment facility, you know." And, you know, I know NA doesn't endorse treatments, the cliche everybody says, but you know what? Thank God for treatment centers, you know, and thank God for those people who find their calling to go into those treatment centers and teach people about the 12-step fellowships, you know, because I went to a place where all the staff members were members of Narcotics Anonymous. My counselor, who's now my grant sponsor, just celebrated 35 years last month. My sponsor went through that program. He's got 21 years clean. You know, I come from a strong sponsoring family that all went through that fellowship and bought into the program of Narcotics Anonymous, because, you know, that place made NA seem like an attractive place for us. You know, when I saw people that live worse off than me change, and they had these positive and happy lifestyles, you know, I started to get some hope and started to believe that I can do it too. You know, like there was light at the end of the tunnel. You know, so you know, she sent me to the treatment center, and, you know, and I was still on the lam in that treatment center. You know, I'm not 100% sure about buying into this, but I didn't want to go back to the abandoned house anymore. You know, I didn't want to go back to the ways and means to get one more. I was tired of that lifestyle, but there was so much fear and anxiety about going down this path because I didn't know what to expect. And I think it says it in one of our Just for Today readings. It talks about that it's the fear of the unknown. We'd rather go back to the uncomfortableness of active addiction because we're used to it. You know, we know what we're going to get, and we don't like change. You know, we're unaccustomed to it. You know, but what I found out in recovery is every time I've gone through some change, it's always been a blessing. But I had to go through that first one at the beginning, and I was so scared, you know. And I remember being in that treatment center, and we'd go to meetings, and I was buying into the NA thing. I was excited, but I hadn't done any step work yet, and you know, and I'm still trying to fill that void inside, you know. And I remember I'd go to the Bridge Group of Miami is the oldest NA meeting. It's 45 years they've been going on. They were the bridge from AA to NA, and you know, and I remember going there and being excited about my recovery, and then leaving there on the way back to the facility and going to pick up prostitutes. You know, I remember there was a guy who gave a few of us a job in that treatment center, and he would pick us up on the weekends, and he would take us out to detail cars, and he wouldn't even take any money. He let us have all the money, and I started stealing out of his customers' cars, and I'm not on drugs anymore. You know, I'm trying to fill a void, you know, and I'm doing the things that I had been doing for so many years because that's what I knew. And you know, after both of those incidences, you know, I remember going back to the treatment center, and I did those things multiple times, but those are just two incidences. I would go back to that treatment center, and I would feel so bad about myself because I'm not able to numb the pain anymore. You know, when I was using, I can go steal all day long because I'm going to go use and I'm going to numb the feelings of shame and guilt and, you know, degradation. You know, I wasn't brought up to be that. So when I did those things, I felt bad, and I was used to succumb those feelings. So now I'm in a treatment center, and I don't have a substance, and I'm going in there and I'm feeling the feelings of these things. And what I was learning through this process is that those are the things I use over. You know, when I do things that are shameful to myself, I'm living in shame. You know, I come from a place where I was abused as a young kid. So I lived my whole life with some kind of shame or another. And, you know, that might have been what brought me to drugs in the first place. But 20 years in active addiction, that I'm not using because of what happened to me anymore. I'm using because of what I'm doing. You know, and I had to grow up and I had to become accountable, you know. So, you know, I remember going back and I'd feel like crap in that treatment center, like, damn, man, I did this. The guy's so good to me. And here I am stealing out of his customers' cars, you know. And you know, and I got honest about it and I shared with someone about this stuff. And I started finding some freedom, man, because, you know, I mean, I'm a secretive person in active addiction. I don't want no one to know what's going on. You know, and one of my favorite sayings that I think I come up with it, you know, I think I'm some kind of original person here, but somebody's probably said it before me. But, you know, they got that saying that we have these secrets we think we're taking to the grave. And what I found out, a different perspective of looking at it, is it was those same secrets that were taking me to the grave. You know, and they were eating me alive from the inside out. You know, every time I ended up in these rooms, you know, there was only so much I was willing to share. You know, there was parts of me that nobody was ever gonna know, and that was the stuff that was eating me alive. You know, and you know, so, you know, in that treatment center, you know, like I said, we were picking up prostitutes, and you know, one night I stayed in, and my partner from the treatment center, we were running part. We went to all our meetings together, we worked together, and then we did these things we shouldn't be doing together. But he went out one night by himself, and he never made it back to the treatment center, and that was, I think, the final scaring part of my recovery that pushed me into the rooms. And I went up and I asked my counselor, I said, what do I got to do to stay clean? And I believe that was the final part of my surrender into this fellowship. And, you know, and he looked at me and he said, I want you to go downstairs to the H&I meeting, and I want you to start listening for somebody to be your sponsor. And, you know, the miracle happened when I asked for help. You know, like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You know, so when I was ready and I asked for that help, I went down to the H&I meeting that night, and the guy who I heard share, I didn't relate to his story, man. He's a Vietnam vet. He's from Cuba. I'm from Miami. You know, he's Spanish. I'm American. He's been in Vietnam. The only war I was ever on and was with the war on drugs. You know, and but you know, I didn't relate to his story at all. But when he started talking about recovery, you can feel the energy in that room. You could feel the passion and excitement for it, and it was such an attraction to me, man. It was the first time I had really been like, I felt that calling for this program, and I knew I needed that in my life. And I had been to many meetings by this time, and I had heard many people say, find a sponsor you trust. Well, I don't think we trust anybody when we get here because we haven't done any work yet. You know, I came in here and I didn't trust anybody, so it was hard. How do you find somebody you trust if you don't know how to live with trust? You know, but you know, when I heard people say, find somebody that has something you want, that I can grasp. And I wanted this passion in my life. I needed it. And I went up to him in that meeting and I asked him, hey, will you be my sponsor? And he said, well, when do you get out of treatment? I was getting out the next Wednesday. And he gave me his phone number, and he said, call me every day when you get out. And I want to tell you this little story because, you know, a lot of people need to hear stuff like this so we don't get dejected. So I got out of treatment a week later. I went to go get a coffee in the morning like I used to do every day. In Miami, we have coladas, the little Cuban coffees. And you know, and I went to go get my little shot of coffee. And, you know, I said, let me try calling this guy. You know, and I call, it rings a few times and it goes to voicemail. And, you know, and I say, hey, man, this is Bill, man. You told me to call you when I got out of treatment. I'm just giving you a call. I just got out yesterday. I'm ready to get started on this journey. You know, I didn't really know what to expect. And I leave my number and, you know, I go about my business and I go to my meeting that night because I had a meeting schedule set up when I left treatment. I was used to going to meetings every night. And, you know, he never called back. And then the next day on Thursday, I went back to go get my coffee in the morning the same way. And I don't know what made me do it, but I called again that second day. And, you know, the same thing happened. And it went to voicemail. And I'm pretty sure I was probably getting a little angry because I was always angry back then. And I was like, why don't this guy answer the phone, man? I'm starting to think these people are full of shit. You know, and I don't know why, man. I went about my business that day. I went to a meeting. And then that Friday morning, I went back to the same place, same routine, man, because it's good to have a good routine. You know, I learned that in treatment. Keep the routine, go A to B, A to B, A to B. You know, and I went to get my coffee, and I don't know what on earth made me call back this third day. But when I picked up the phone and called, he picked up on the first ring, and he said, hey, Bill, how you doing, man? Meet me at the Bridge Group tonight, and I'll give you your first assignment. Now, what I learned in that process, man, is that's the beginning. We have to chase our recovery like we chase our drugs. I'm sure everybody in here has called a dope dealer, and when that dope dealer didn't answer or get there on time, they were already calling multiple other dope dealers. You know, so we didn't give up off the first one there. You know, and you know, we don't give up on our recovery. We chase that recovery the same way. You know, if we chase it the same way, we're going to get so many positive results in our lives. You know, And so he gave me my first assignment that night, and and I got busy on my steps, and the steps saved my life. I used to hear sayings like the steps can help us through anything life throws our way. I didn't understand it then, but after I stuck around for a while and I've worked the steps numerous times and I've learned how to apply principles in my life, I truly understand what they mean by that today. And now I'm sure I share it in meetings to others, and they're like, "What the hell is he talking about?" So you got to give it a chance. So anyway, he gave me my first assignment. Step one was real easy for me. It took a lot of years to get to the point where it was easy because I knew I was a drug addict. I could tell you from the first time I picked up, I couldn't stop. Everybody went home and I was still using at 13 years old. It didn't matter what I was using, but I kept going. And I'm there the next day when people are starting to show up. I hadn't slept, and I'm still on the vicious cycle. So it started early. And I'm chasing. I could see that. The part I struggled with in step one was that the unmanageability part, because what I grew up with a mindset like I got myself into this mess, I can get myself out of this mess. You know what I mean? You don't know how I got here. How are you going to get? I was just so in denial on that aspect of it. And I finally surrendered and realized, man, I don't know how to get out of this mess. I had dug myself in a hole that I couldn't find the edges of the wall to climb out of it. I was stuck. I was hopeless. I was in despair. And it was at that point that I surrendered that I started finding some kind of hope in this program. So it's step one is usually at the end of our road when we realize we can't do it anymore. We surrender wholeheartedly. I could not fix anything in my life. I couldn't fix finances, relationships. I didn't know how to live life. I couldn't show up and keep a job because, I was still getting fired from jobs in my early. I got fired 3 times in my first year of recovery, man, because I thought I was better than everybody. I felt less than everybody, but I thought I was better than everybody, and I just, with that mindset, it's a miserable existence, and so it was when I finally got to that point that I opened the door for that hope that we talk about in step 2. And there's so many little acronyms, hold on, pain ends, hearing other people's experience, whatever it is, and my sponsor, he gave me an assignment and he said, I want you to describe some higher powers. And he said, we're not talking about God now, because remember I told you when I was in the abandoned house, it was easy to communicate with God when I was broken, but now I'm in recovery, and for some reason I don't want nothing to do with God anymore. Like, I'm starting that resentment I had been carrying around towards God for a lot of years because I blamed him for my existence. I blamed him for the lifestyle. He didn't pick up the pipe. I did. And here I am. I want to blame everybody. So I hadn't quite got to that yet. But in that second step, man, I started really putting the rooms. I used to go to a lot of step meetings in early recovery, and and I hear people talk about use the rooms as a higher power. You're not more powerful than this whole room. No matter how much of a badass you think you are, if 3 or 4 of these people jump on you, they're going to get you, and just looking at it in that street mentality is what I needed, and so I put the rooms were they were definitely a higher power than me, they were doing things that I couldn't even imagine doing, and I've seen some of the rap sheets of some of these guys, and there was a guy that used to I go to a lot of meetings with. He's in my sponsored family, and and he's sharing his last run of when he got arrested, his process with the judge, and he's got a judge that comes to NA meetings every year and presents him a medallion. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, bro, that was just out of my realm. I couldn't fathom stuff like that. But when I saw it with my own 2 eyes, that hope started growing even more and more and more. And so I'm grateful for experiences like that, because that's what I needed to stay. And then I moved on to my third step, and we talk about trust and higher power and God and all this stuff. And what I did in that third step, man, I turned my will and my life over to the program of Narcotics Anonymous. If I work these steps the way they're written and I do what you guys suggest, chances are I'll get the results you guys have got. Like it says, man, if you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, and you're ready to take certain steps, so something's working here. Maybe I should try it. Maybe I'll get the results if I try.
You got muted there. I'm unmuting you. You're good now. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah. So what I was saying, so I turned my will over to this program. If I want what you guys have to offer, I'll be willing to do the work, and that's what I did. I started doing all the work here, and I wrote a 4th step that, am I muted again? No, I'm not. So I wrote a 4th step out, and remember I tell you, I was abused at a young age, and that was one of those things that I carried around for for a lot of years, you know, that shame of why did this happen to me, you know, and, you know, basically it took my innocence away at a very young age. And you know, and I started going down a path that just wasn't right, man, you know, because I was trying to fill a void at an early age, you know, but what I found out through writing this first 4-step and actually getting honest about it and really sharing all the dark and dirtiness about who I had become, and, you know, and that's not who I was. You know, I found out the shame was in the end, like, you know, my poor mom, you know, that I would go to her house and knock on her window multiple times during a night, you know, asking her to take me to the bank, give me money, you know. I mean, I was her only child. All she did was try and help me, man, and love me, you know, and you know, I have a lot of sadness about that because I hurt this poor lady so bad, you know, but recovery gave me a chance to turn it over, and I'll get to all that. But, you know, I remember going to her house one night and, you know, and she let me in, and you know, I remember her telling me, like, in complete despair and her hopelessness, looking at me with tears in her eyes and saying, like, I wish you would die already, you know. And I remember at the moment I was like, how the hell can you say that to me? But, you know, I understand where she was coming from. She was in so much pain and couldn't go on like that anymore. And I looked at her with tears in my eyes and I said, let's get in the fucking car and let's go. You know, and I basically took my mom hostage and you know, and robbed her basically without having a gun. I mean, she was scared of me, and I went in, and I made her took me to the bank. And you know, the sad part about it, I felt so much shame of making her say that. She took me to the bank. I went and got high, and 2 hours later, I came back and I knocked on the same window. You know, being in the grips, man, and not being able to stop myself from doing things, no matter how badly I wanted to. You know, and no matter how bad it made me feel, and I just kept doing it over and over. You know, and the insanity and insidiousness of it. You know, it was just a miserable experience. You know, and you know, and I can tell you, years later, I had a couple years clean, and you know, and I started that process of making amends to my mom. You know, and I remember I went to her house one weekend, and you know, and I spent the night there, and I woke up on that Saturday morning, and she looked at me and she says, "Why were you knocking at my window last night?" Man, I hadn't knocked on her window in over 4 years. I had 2 years clean at the time, and my last 2 years I didn't have any contact with her, but you know, I hadn't knocked on her window in over 4 years, and she's still having sleepless nights from the effects of me knocking on her window, you know. And like, that hit me deep, man. That hurt. You know, we don't realize how badly our addiction is entangled in others around us lives, you know. And this poor woman, I remember looking at her, man, and I've had such compassion for her this time. You know, I had become a man. I started becoming a man, and you know, and I was feeling my feelings, and I felt like complete crap. But I looked her in the eyes and I said, I'm so sorry for ever knocking on your window like that, and I promise you I will never knock on your window again. You know, and she passed away a couple years ago, and I'll tell you, man, I wish I could knock on her window again now, you know, just because I miss her so much. But you know, I never did it again for drugs, you know. And so anyway, I shared that shame of that stuff with my sponsor, you know, and the real nasty side of me, the things I would do to get more, that those secrets, like I said, those secrets that I was going to take to the grave. You know, the people I harmed, the girls I prostituted out, you know, the shit I stole, you know, and all that crap. And, you know, and as I started getting it out, man, I started feeling better about myself. I started feeling like lighter. You know, I was becoming free of all that crap. And you know, and I didn't like who I had become in active addiction. I knew that's not who I was. And for years, I didn't think I could change. I thought I was stuck in that lifestyle, you know. But what I found out through those fourth and fifth steps, and you know, and then even farther on when I went through my 6th and 7th step, you know, and I started looking at the defects of character, the exact nature of my wrong. And you know, my sponsor always tells me, you know, he always says, you're not responsible for your disease, but you're responsible for your recovery. So I didn't have any awareness of all this stuff back then, or any way out of it, you know. So I mean, I'm powerless, man. When I'm in the grips, I'm powerless. I'm gonna do things that go against my nature. I'm gonna do things I don't believe in. You know, and I'm going to keep doing them to keep getting one more to fill the void that and, you know, the shame that I'm suffering by doing them, you know. I was in a vicious cycle. And, you know, my sponsor always tells me, you're not that person, man. You only do that when you're on a substance. And he started explaining to me, he's like, in simple terms, like with my mom, he said, how many times have you robbed your mom since you've been in recovery? You know, and the answer was 0. And he goes, so why don't you start seeing yourself for who you really are? That's not who you are. You know, and I started looking at myself differently, and I started gaining a better perspective on who I am. And you know, and that good heart that I had somewhere inside, you know, I found out in my 4th step, like there was some kindness in me, you know, and I believe those were a reflection of who I really am. You know, it had just been covered up with all that defect, the character, you know, the being a thief, the the lying, cheating, manipulating, the convict that I had become. I came to recovery, man. For years, I'd come in here and I would be like, this isn't for me, man. I'm a career criminal. I'm never gonna have a chance to live life. I really shot myself short. Years later, I have this life that I never fathomed to be possible for me. I couldn't see that far. In the beginning, this time when I got to recover, in the beginning, man, I didn't even care if I had to work at labor unions for the rest of my life and I had to live in a one-bedroom rooming house, man. I really didn't care anymore. It was better than the alternative. There was a lot of fear there, but it was so much better than the alternative, and I remember being okay with that because that's all the faith and hope I had at the time. As I've stuck around, that hope has grown tremendously. My faith has grown tremendously. My trust has grown tremendously. You remember I told you I couldn't trust anybody when I got here? Man, today I can tell you, man, my sponsor, he knows everything about me. There's not a thing I won't share with him. And it gets harder in recovery. It gets harder when you got 10 years clean and you do something that brings you shame. Like, how much harder it is to tell my sponsor something I've done with 7, 8, 9, 10 years clean than it is to tell him the things I did while I was in active addiction? I don't have any excuse anymore, so sometimes it gets hard, but I trust him. And I know he's never steered me down the wrong path. He doesn't judge me, and he always just gives me hope and points me back in the right direction, and I'm forever grateful. I think, I got blessed with a sponsor who became like a father to me in Narcotics Anonymous, so that's even better. Not only has he walked me through the steps, he's helped me become a man and be somebody that I can be proud of, so, I learned about all that stuff in the sixth step. And, and I start learning in the seventh step. I start learning how the way I work my first 6 and 7 step is, you take a defect and you turn it over and you got an attribute or a principle, and I started trying to practice some principles in my life. And, I'll share one with you. One was patience, and I remember I was working on this and I was dating a girl in recovery and, we went to Publix one night. And we get in the line, and the whole time we're in the line, she's bitching about how slow the line's moving, and and I was like, "Why are we in this line then?" And she explained like that her sponsor had on an assignment to get in the longest line and try and practice patience. Well, I didn't hear any patience while we were in that line, and what I did is I learned how to apply patience in my life. If I stand in that long line and I stand there with an attitude and I'm bitching and I'm moping, where's the patience? So I've learned to be kind to people in line. Maybe ask somebody in front of me how they're doing. Even let somebody cut in front of me, and stand there a little bit longer. I'm not in a rush anymore, man. For years I was in a rush to get nowhere. So I learned about patience being how I act during that process of waiting, and I remember feeling that much better about myself. And I'd get up to the register and, maybe make a joke and put a smile on the cashier's face, man. I mean, maybe she's having a rough day. Maybe they don't get paid that much. Maybe she's miserable on a 9-to-5 job. I don't know. But why do I make it even worse by bitching and moaning? Why not try and bring some light into the world and some joy? And when I do those things, I feel better about myself. When I practice principles, I feel better about myself. And what happens is it becomes easier to practice principles. But, like the 6 and 7 step, we're going to fall short. I'm going to make mistakes. There's going to be times where I don't have patience and I'm going to lose my cool. The good thing is it doesn't happen very often anymore. And when it does, I don't like the way I feel almost instantaneously, and I can correct it right away, and change and get back on that positive path, but like I know in the last 6 months, I'm sure it's affected all of us in one way or another, but this COVID thing is taking its toll, and I've gotten snappy at home, I've gotten snappy at my job, and just it's taking its toll, and I've had a good time through the pandemic. I haven't been out of work. I had a newborn baby born on June 6th. I'm at my home. I got my 2 sons now and my fiance, and life's great. I have a great career going for me, but it's just taking this little bit of toll. I'm not making as many meetings as I used to make. I'm that person who my first 9 years in recovery, man, I was making a meeting almost every day. I've been to meetings. I've traveled and I've been to like 25 states in recovery for work. And I've been to multiple meetings in every state I've been through, and I've got connected in this fellowship. And here I am, this pandemic started, and I had a hard time in the beginning getting on Zoom. And then when I got into Zoom, I was on fire for it for a little while. And, and then hold on, sorry about that. I got to a point where I'm going to meetings like once a week, man. And that's scary for me because I'm not that addict who got high once a week. I'm that addict who got high every day. I understand I have a daily reprieve. That means I need to do things for my recovery on a daily basis. And I get scared because, man, that's the healthiest fear I think I could ever have, is the fear of returning to that lifestyle of active addiction. You know, I don't want to go back there. I love having the fear of that lifestyle. And you know, so you know, what have I been doing is I talked to my sponsor about this, and my sponsor, you know, remember when I was in that treatment center and he told me, call me when you get out, call me every day. Well, I can tell you, I've been calling my sponsor every day for over 10 years now. Do you have to do that? No, I got in the habit of it. You know, I like the saying, you know, never get off a winning horse, and he never told me to stop calling him. So, you know, I figure why stop? You know, I'm glad I have that relationship with him. So, you know, every day I do for my recovery, you know, I wake up, I pray, I read my literature every single day. I've been doing it for over 10 years now. And then I call my sponsor every day. And the only part I talk to sponsees and I'm sponsoring people and we work steps. So the only part I'm really slacking on is my meeting attendance. And, you know, and I'm aware of it. So what do I do about it? Now, you know, I was telling you about the prayers, and, you know, and I can tell you my prayer a lot of times is, hey, thank you, God, for waking me up, and then go about my business. But a couple of weeks ago, I noticed that my meeting attendance had really slacked. And, you know, and I got open about it, and I got into that real conversation with God, like I was telling you about when I was in that abandoned house. And I was like, God, help me get some courage and get back into my meeting attendance. You know, I forget my exact prayer, but it was real to the point. And, you know, it was almost immediately that I finished saying that prayer that I've gotten called to do, like, speak at this meeting, speak at that meeting, go to this event. You know, it's like,
I'm unmuting you. There you go.
there. Sorry about that.
You good?
Yeah. So you know, oh my goodness. Some people see that still got obsession and compulsion. They keep calling. They know I'm not answering, yeah. So anyway, you know, and I got honest about it, and then you see how God answers my prayers, and He starts placing people in my life to, hey, come to this event. Hey, I'm speaking tonight. Can you come support me at my, you know, in my meeting?
I'm gonna keep trying to unmute him. Apparently, he's very popular. He's getting a bunch of phone calls back to back.
I'm sorry, guys.
You're good.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I just told him now. So anyway, yeah. So you know, I got back on my horse, and you know, and I'm going back to my meetings regularly again. You know, maybe not as regularly as I would like because there's still a lot of closed meetings, but you know, I had enough awareness of it, and I don't want to go back to my lifestyle. And you know, and I've seen so many people with so many years clean, man. They stop doing the basics, and what happens, man? 9 out of 10 times they use, and when they come back, if they're lucky enough, they all say the same thing, man. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped praying. I stopped working my program. I got out of the basics, you know. So what I've tried to live by my whole recovery is if I stay in the basics, I never have to worry about returning to the basics. And you know, so you know, I had to get back on my horse and start doing what I got to do for my recovery. You know, like I said, I got to chase my recovery like I chased my drugs. You know, and I might have went a day or two without using, but I didn't go any much longer than that. You know, so you know, I got to do what I got to do, and you know, I'm glad I have that awareness. I'm glad I have that love for this fellowship. And you know, I appreciate it. And I'm grateful for this fellowship because if I wasn't, I probably wouldn't do these things, you know? So, moving on, you know, I go to my 8th and 9th step, and, you know, these were 2 of the steps. Four, I had a little bit of fear of 4 when I got here, but, you know, our 4th step says in the beginning, I heard somebody in my early recovery say the 4th step says we took a searching and fearless. You know, and for some reason, I always missed those last 4 letters of that. And the fear part just made me afraid to work it. So for years, I wouldn't work that step. And I remember reading step 8 and 9 and like the shame of the people I had to put on that list. It really hurt me. And I didn't know how I was going to make amends to these people. I didn't know what I could do. You know, I thought I had did too much damage to repair. And what I found out through the process of 8th and 9th step is, you know, I also have to forgive myself as well. You know, and if I don't forgive myself, everybody else's forgiveness is nothing, you know? So, you know, I remember going over that 8-step list, and I probably had a little over 2 years clean by this time. And, you know, I was going to meetings and I was doing service and I was involved heavily in my recovery. You know, in early recovery, I was very heavily involved. I had a commitment almost every night of the week, you know, And I remember talking to my sponsor after I wrote this big list out. You know, I put my mom on a list. You know, she was the greatest source of shame. I put my dad on the list. He had passed away many years before I got clean. I didn't know how I was going to make amends to them. I had heard different stories about writing letters and stuff, and I didn't really feel the depth of writing a letter. If it works for you, so be it. That wasn't for me. And you know, and then I wrote down whole neighborhoods, like wherever abandoned houses were that I lived in my active addiction. You know, I had to put whole neighborhoods down because I would leave there and I would burglarize every house through every neighborhood. You know, like hundreds and hundreds of cars a night I would break into, and you know, and I remember just writing this list down, you know, and I didn't know how I was going to make amends to these things. But by this time, I had started gaining some trust in my sponsor. I knew he wasn't going to tell me to do anything that was going to send me to prison for the rest of my life. You know, what good is that going to do me? And, you know, and I just put it all on the list. And, you know, I had heard enough people in meetings say to make sure I put myself on the list because I harm myself more than anybody else. You know, and I used to think like, how's that so? You know, what I found out is every time I hurt somebody else, I hurt myself at the same time. So when I hurt 100 people, I hurt myself 100 times. And, you know, and it started to make sense. You know, that's part of the reason I was so angry and shameful when I got here because I hated who I had become, man. You know, I really hated being in my skin. And, you know, and I remember I brought this list to my sponsor and, you know, and he started laughing and I was like, man, what are you laughing at, man? What do you think, I'm soft or something? You think my active addiction is weak? You know, I remember just getting real defensive and you know, and he looked at me and he says, no, man, we're going to scratch off half of this stuff, man. You can't go back and knock on these people's door and say, hey, I robbed you, man. You might have some that are forgiving and you might be able to pay some back, but some of them aren't going to be forgiven. And you're already a 2-time convicted felon. You know, you might end up back in prison again for the rest of your life. So, you know, he goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how you make amends for all those things without harming yourself. And it says that in step 9, to make amends without harming ourselves, you know, or harming others further. And you know, and he said, well, you got 3 or 4 service commitments. I know because I've spoken for you. You're helping people in recovery. I had a couple sponsees at this time. He goes, those are the way you make amends indirectly for all those things. And you continue to do so for the remainder of your time in recovery. You know, you start becoming a asset in your community where you might have been that person nobody wanted around. Well, now you start helping become a positive change in your neighborhood. And you know, and you become friendly with all the people. And like, I live in a condo now with my fiance, and you know, and she gets mad at them. And I treat these people around here, whether they treat me good or bad, I treat them all with kindness. You know, nobody in this building can say anything negative about me. And you know, and I don't give them a reason to say anything negative about me. You know, so these are all ways I can make amends for those harms I caused in the past. You know, and if somebody were to break in my car and steal my stereo system out of it, you know, I think that was also an adjust for today recently. Do I want them to be punished? You know, if that's the case, then I deserve to be punished for all the shit I did, you know, and in reality, you know, we want mercy, you know, so I have to have some kind of forgiveness for them. So, you know, even throughout recovery, not even people stealing from me, when somebody has done me wrong, I might get angry at the beginning of it, but I've learned to find a place of forgiveness for them as well, because I've learned through all my lifestyle that if I don't have a forgiving heart, I'm just as bad off as the other people are, you know, and you know, I had to learn that through the abuse I suffered, man. You know, I had to find forgiveness for my abuser that happened to me when I was a little kid. It's a family member. Matter of fact, just recently I had to see that family member face to face. And you know, and good thing I'm in recovery and I've got some clean time because I'm no longer that scared kid anymore. You know, and I was able to look at him and see him as a person he is. You know, he's just a sick individual who did what he did because who knows what happened to him. You know, the good thing is that I haven't had to carry on that lifestyle, and I have never hurt anybody in that way, you know, and I've broken the chain of whatever happened to me, you know, and I lived with that shame for a lot of years, you know, and I found some kind of compassion and forgiveness for him. Do I have to associate with that family member the rest of my life? No, I don't. But I had to find forgiveness and peace for my sake, you know. So you know, I went on through this 8 to 9 step with my sponsor, you know, and you know, I remember thinking like, how am I ever going to pay my mom back financially for all the things I did to her? And this is the deepest part of my story, you know. When I got here, the one reservation I had was if my mom dies, I'm not going to stay clean. That was my ticket to get high. And you know, because I go to meetings and I hear a lot of people share. A good friend of mine shared in a meeting. She was sharing about when her dad passed away. Somebody shared it for her, and she says, "What are you going to do if that loved one that you love dies? Are you going to smoke them up out of the ground?" And like, it just made so much sense to me. When my dad died, I left the funeral to get high. I didn't know how to deal with it. It never brought him back. I never dealt with the feelings, you know. So when she said that, I knew that there was no amount of dope in the world that was ever going to bring my mom back if she died. You know, and then next I went to my sponsor and I started talking to him about that stuff. And my sponsor explained to me, he says, is your mom dead? I said, no. He goes, well, stop burying her. You know, I'm burying her in my first year in recovery, and she lived for 7 more years, you know. And he goes, and what you do when the time comes is you honor your mom by living the life that makes her proud of you. So what you do is you get busy on that amends process and you become somebody she could be proud of. And, you know, so I took care of my mom in recovery for the whole 7 years that she was here when I was in recovery. You know, I was there for, you know, when she got real bad and we had to put her in a nursing home. And, you know, I went through some dark times. You know, I had to go clean out her house, and the memories that stirred up, you know, I didn't do it alone, man. I called other addicts over to help me out to go through those personal things because, man, alone, it was painful, man. I remember as soon as I opened a drawer and I was looking at some photos, and, you know, the last photo where I was in a family picture, I was like 12 years old. And then there's no pictures of me for many, many years. And then there's a prison picture of me many years later, you know, and like it just brought up so much pain and shame and guilt, you know, that I knew not to do it alone. And I brought people over and we went through that. And, you know, and she was in that nursing home, and I went to visit her every chance I could get. I travel for work, so it was kind of hard. And, you know, I go to that nursing home and they tell me not to bring her coffee and donuts. You know, she has full kidney failure, and, you know, and I know what made her happy. And, you know, so I snuck her in coffee and donuts every time I went. And when I walked in that door, I tell you, man, the smiles that she gave me and those last 2 years that she was in that nursing home made everything up to that point worthwhile. It made me fall in love with Narcotics Anonymous to such a deep extent that I owe my life to this program. You know, I got to let this lady find peace. You know, and I'll tell you, her last week alive, you know, she ended up going in the hospital on Monday, and she was in like I want to say a diabetic coma, and she was unresponsive. And, you know, and I sat there in that hospital. I would go there in the morning. I would brush her hair. I would talk to her. I would pray. I'd cry. You know, I remember praying to God, let her go already, take her already, you know, and I could understand back when my mom told me she wished I would die. It wasn't that she wanted me to die. She was tired of watching me suffer. And, you know, and I remember feeling that same feeling. I remember feeling like I'm tired of watching her suffer anymore. You know, she was so bedridden. It was like her quality of life was so gone. You know, and I was tired of watching her, and I would leave there feeling all weak and dejected, and I would go to my home group, which meant at 12:30 every day, electric lunch, and I would share about it and cry about it, and I would go right back to the meeting, to the hospital, and do the same thing. And then at 7 o'clock, I would leave and go to another meeting and do the same thing, and then go back, and you know, and I did that, and so I went Monday and Tuesday and did that, and on that Wednesday, I showed up at like 10 o'clock at night because I was working, and you know, and I walked in and she had woken up. And I looked at her, man, and I said, I love you, Mom. And she said, I love you too. And she closed her eyes that night and she never woke up again. And, you know, like that was the best gift ever, man. I was present for her to tell me she loved me. And that was the last word she said, you know, and, you know, I'm truly grateful for Narcotics. And it was never about paying her back financially. It was never about any of that. It was about becoming right and being somebody that she could be proud of and know that I was going to be all right. And, you know, and I got to bury my mom. I got to bring family and friends in, you know, and I got to do something that honors her. And I continue to do that. You know, my only regret is I wish she would have met my fiance and my stepson and my newborn. You know, I wish she would have met them. But I do know she's there watching over us. And, you know, I have an angel for life. And, you know, I'm so grateful for that moment there. And, you know, and then I want to talk about like my dad, you know, I had heard people talk about the letters. And, you know, it didn't seem meaningful. The letter didn't work for me. And, you know, not knocking anybody else, whatever works for each of us works, you know. And what worked for me is just continuing to live a life that my dad would be proud of. And what happened is one of my mom and dad's neighbors called me one day, and I think it was on a Father's Day. I had a couple years clean, and he said, are you good? Can you talk? And I said, what's up? I pulled over, and he goes, man, you know, Bill, I've been watching you for the last few years, and I just want to tell you, as a father myself, and as a good friend of your dad, that I could just tell you your dad would be the proudest father in the world watching you live the lifestyle you're living today. And I remember the floodgates opened. You know, I hadn't mourned my dad. You know, when my dad died many years earlier, I left the funeral home, like I said, to get high, and I never dealt with it. And when he did that, man, it opened up the floodgates, man, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I felt so much peace and relief afterwards. And, you know, and I live with that today. I am my dad's son. You know, my dad was a perfect role model, a perfect example. And, you know, and I'm pretty sure in the end of his life, you know, he was probably tossing and turning at night thinking he did something wrong. you know, and recovery's given me the opportunity to turn it all around and to be somebody I know he'd be proud of today, you know, and truly, truly grateful, you know. So, you know, I went through those processes and you know, and I'll tell you that part about me. I had to find forgiveness for myself because going through all this stuff, man, I still had a lot of hate and anger in my early recovery. And it was all I'd spew out at other people around me, but it was really never about anybody else. It was about how I felt about me. And I remember one night I was sitting in a 3/4 way house, and I remember just like, do I really want to stay here? Is this really what I want? And you know, and I dropped my pen and I just started contemplating, and I found I was like missing that forgiveness for myself and forgiveness for others. You know, I want to be forgiven, but I was forgetting about the other side of the coin, you know, and you know, and I like verbally said that I forgive myself, and then I examined my life up to that point in recovery and realized that everything I had been doing had been an act of forgiveness towards myself. Because as I was working the steps and cleaning up my life, what am I doing? It's a form, you know, I can apologize to you all day long. If I don't change the behavior, I'm really not apologizing, you know. I'm just telling you what a sorry piece of crap I am. Like I did my whole life. I'm sorry. And then do the shit again and again and again. You know, but what happened is all my action up to that point showed me that I had been saying sorry to myself through my actions. And you know, and I finally felt the freedom this program offers, you know, and they say we have a spiritual awakening and the steps. And I want to say that was a spiritual awakening that led me on to continue my recovery for multiple years, you know, and you know, I continue to take inventory of my 10th step. If I'm wrong, I probably admitted it. I pray and meditate regularly every day. I'm even right now, I'm in the process of when I'm at home every night with my son, I'm teaching him how to pray. And it's funny because, you know, he's got to find his own understanding. He's 9 years old, but, you know, just practicing with him, you know, the night before last, we were up there and I said, do you want to lead the prayer? And, you know, and he led the prayer the other night, you know, and it was just a good feeling to know that I'm being a positive example in someone's life. Cause for many years I was that person nobody wanted anything to do with. And, you know, and to have a kid look at me as a role model is just an awesome feeling and it's an awesome experience. And, you know, now I got the newborn. That's even more precious. You know, that was the thing I had given up on. Like, maybe I'm not meant to be a father of my own kids, you know, and, you know, and then last year, you know, God saw fit for my fiance to become pregnant. And we had this beautiful, healthy boy, Lucas, born on June 6th. And you know, I want to talk about, you know, God's timing. You know, we want things on our time. And all these years I was giving up. I was starting to get resentful towards God again. Like, why can't you give me a son, you know, or a daughter? I just wanted a kid. You know, I wanted to be able to share my life with a child. And, you know, and it doesn't happen on my time. It happens on his time. And here's the funny story. I was working up in New England. And, you know, when the baby was due on June 19th. So I put in for my transfer. I got approved to transfer back to Florida. And, you know, I left New England on June 5th. I started driving and I got to the house on June 6th. The baby's due on the 19th. I was home for an hour when my fiance started bleeding. We rushed to the hospital and the baby was born that night. So you talk about like God holding off, waiting for daddy to get there so I could be present from the moment he was conceived into this world, you know, and I held him and he smiled for me. And I keep him as my Facebook photo because I was holding him in that little swaddle. And he's just so cute and adorable, the most precious thing that I've ever been given in my life, you know. And just like this road to recovery, the most precious thing about it all is if I continue on this journey, this kid never has to see me use. He never has to see that ugly, dark side of me. And it's still there, you know. I've done a lot of work and I changed, but there's still a little bit of darkness that I got to keep working on because it rears its head up every now and then. But I have this program that's helped me deal with everything life throws my way, you know. So, you know, I'm truly grateful to have that little son in my life. And, you know, I want to share a couple little things with you. So, you know, we suffer from a disease that talks about one is too many and thousands never enough. And my friend Dominic put out this saying that he shared in a meeting one day, and he likes to change literature, which I'm not too thrilled about all the time because our literature is written the way it is for a reason. But man, he says it so perfectly, man. One is too many, period. It's not the last one. It's that first one that gets us, man. And so I understand that one is too many, period. But the story I want to say is my sponsor helped me go on a journey a few years ago to repair my credit and start establishing credit for my future. And you know, and I remember doing some work. I got a secured card from the bank, and I got obsessive about it. And, you know, obsession and compulsion runs through our lives, you know, with or without drugs, it's still there. And, you know, I've got this card and I would spend, I would pay, I'd spend it. I got so obsessive about it. But, you know, I'll tell you, man, I started getting that letter in the mail. You've been approved for a card. And I kept accepting all these offers, man. And what I'm getting at, one is too many, is a thousand is never enough. I don't need 100 credit cards, and here I am accepting all these offers. I got 20 something credit cards, and one is too many, period. So, I went through that little process. I got myself in a little debt, but I had an awareness and I was able to get smart about it, and I started chopping up cards and I got out of the debt. And I didn't ruin my credit, thank God, but that obsession and compulsion took off on me. And I went from a 473 score to like a high 70. I actually broke 800 recently, and it's just like a miracle, man. I was living in abandoned houses. I wasn't eating, I wasn't bathing, I wasn't taking care of myself. And to a person who has credit, I have a career going for me, it's just so amazing the lifestyle I got, and so I come here, like I said, I'm a career criminal, and I was okay with living in that one bedroom rooming house for the rest of my life. I was okay with that. But God sees so much more in us, that we don't see. And so as I did some work, my last company I was with, I went into the office one day and I asked the manager in there, I said, I would like to take on a bigger role here. I was tired of just being a laborer. I want to do something with my life. I want more. And I'd like to take on a better position. And she goes, okay, I think you can handle it, and she hands me an envelope like a week later and she goes, go over there. They had the company house. She goes, go over there and read all the information and let me know what you think, man. And I go to the house and I open this stuff up and man, there's 2 credit cards in there, American Express business card and another card. And, my addictive set, I have probably like 6 years clean at this time. The addict self and me, the first thing I do is call the 1-800 number on the card. And the first one had like a $20,000 balance. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm credit card shopping now. And then, and I called the other one. The other one was unlimited, man. And I got scared, man. I remember going back across the street to this lady and, I said, are you sure you want me to have these credit cards? And she looked at me and she told me with this such a sincere face, she said, Bill, I've looked at your record. As a matter of fact, she goes here and she pulls out my last mug shot. I look pretty shady. And she looks at that mug shot and she looks at me and she goes, I could never imagine you being this person. Another result of Narcotics Anonymous working in our lives, and she goes, you're going to do just fine. And she gave me those cards and for 3 years, I was a foreman in that company. Not one time did I do, actually one time I accidentally bought something for myself on that card and I realized it when I was in the store and I called her right away within a minute. I said, I use a card, I bought a Gator. And she goes, don't worry about it, it's on me. So for 3 years I had those cards and I didn't break her trust because I learned how to be honest. I learned how to be a man of integrity here in Narcotics Anonymous. I learned how to do things the right way, and I'm gonna end with this little story. I was talking to a neighbor of mine the other day. He's been a mentor of mine for years. He's in the other fellowship. And he never gave up on me. He saw me at my worst, and I was going on a government base to do a job, and I got there and they denied me access because of all the felonies. I have like 30 something felonies on my record. I think 31 felonies, and they said you can't come on our property because of your past. And she goes, I can see that it's all old, but she goes, we don't allow you. So she gives me this paper and she goes, you can follow these things and we can get past it. And so it was like complete a treatment facility. I had that, like 5 letters of reference and some other things or whatever. So I'm getting all these reference letters together. And my neighbor wrote in the letter, he said, man, who would have thought that we would see Billy driving down the street in a BMW? And I don't have a BMW, but the funny thing is the other neighbor looked over. He goes, who would have thought I would have gave him my damn keys? I used to run a little detailing business, and these people saw me at my work, and the guy used to give me his keys to all his cars. He'd go out of town, had keys to his house. And the joke, like, who would have thought we'd be giving him keys to our houses? So as I've recovered, all the people around me have had a chance to recover as well. We all recover in different ways and different phases. And and as I say, when I got here, the only family member that was in my life was my mom. Through that whole time that I became a son to my mom, her older sister and became my aunt again. She had never given up on me. They prayed about me, prayed for me, but had nothing to do with me. And last year I was fortunate enough working up in New England. I got to reunite with my mom's family. Not all of them because of COVID came out, but I got to take my mom's oldest sister, my cousins, and them out to dinner. And so as I've recovered, those relationships with my family have recovered. And I used to think I didn't hurt them. Like, how can I hurt them? I had no contact with them. Man, when I'm living that lifestyle, anybody who cares about me or loves me is in some kind of pain watching me destroy my life. I understand today because I've seen people that are real close to me go out there and destroy their lives, and it hurts. So I understand where they're coming from. But like I said, as I recover, they get to recover as well. So I'm really grateful for the program of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm going to continue doing what works. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not getting off the winning horse. You know, this is the best hit in town. If you're new, welcome. You know, I promise you, if you give this program a chance, you know, you don't have to trust it at the beginning. Just try it, man. I'm telling you, that's what I did. I got a sponsor and I worked steps and I got the results to this program, you know. So I promise that if you try this too, you can get these same results. So I came here as a career criminal, homeless, living in abandoned houses. Today I have a beautiful family. I live in a condo over the bay. I have a career, a healthy, awesome career with a Fortune 500 company. Who would have thought? You know, as a matter of fact, when I hired on with these people last year, they were doing the interview process, and the lady goes, "Okay, we're going to check your driver's record." You know, I was a habitual traffic offender. That's another thing I fix here. And she goes, "We go back 5 years, you know, and by this time I had 7 years. I had my license." She came back, my license was clean. She goes, "Now we're going to do a criminal background check," and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go again." And I said, "What does that entail?" She goes, "We go back 5 years as well." You know, I had 10 years clean at the time. You know, my record came back spotless. You know, so as I've done the work and I stayed in this program, I've received the promises of this program. You know, my sponsor always tells me, "Man, stop doubting." You know, like just like when I bought my first car in recovery and the first day they told me no, I called my sponsor. You know, he told me, he said, "Why are you taking no for an answer? I bet you if you were at the dope house trying to get one, you wouldn't have took no for an answer." You know, so why are you taking no for an answer when you're doing the right thing? You have everything going for you. And I've learned to pursue things that I want in recovery. You know, I'm so grateful for sponsorship. I think I have the best sponsor in the world, you know. And you know, I think it only happens when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I hope I never stop being a student, and I hope I never stop being a teacher, because we're all on both sides of that coin. I love you guys. I really appreciate your service, and I thank you guys for letting me come out and share for you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.